Hello, this is Kara from Kara Tarot, and today I'm sharing with you a hashtag, the 12 deck tag. A couple of my good friends have done this, and this was created by Angel at Feeding My Soul 1212. And so I thought I would join in too. It's 4 prompts with 3 decks each, and you can change the prompts, but I just decided to go with the ones I think were the original ones. These are the ones that Ina at Taproot Tarot did. I know my friend Moon Rain, she changed some of them. So I begin with, and I'm afraid this is just going to be the usual suspects, 3 decks you felt called to use as soon as you received them, and why. And I'll start with the Tarocchi Italiani by Valentina De Luca, and her company name is Metronua, and they are in the midst of creating some other decks now, I believe. This is one of my most recent decks. And just for those of you who don't know, because I didn't catch this, and I'll put his tag here. Tom is the one who mentioned this QR code here. This QR code actually takes you back to her Kickstarter page, but where she has the link to her PDF of her system of how she reads Tarot de Marseille. And so that's worth knowing. I didn't even notice that code because I was just so engrossed in the artwork on it. And I have since learned a couple other people didn't know about that either. So that's what that QR code is for. I won't go through all of these, but these are just beautiful, hand-painted. It's a pip deck. This is one where I missed the Kickstarter, but I contacted her right after it closed, and she would very generously said, yes, I will have one for you, but give me a couple weeks and contact me again, and I did, and it all went very smoothly. She is darling, as well as just incredibly talented. These are larger size tarot cards that are Tarot de Marseille style. This beautiful, actually kind of autumnal color range. Even the blues are kind of a slate blue. It has 2 devils and 2 moons. The devils, I call this one entertainment and the other one lust. It has 2 lover cards as well. So just, this was a deck that I could not wait to use. I used it as soon as I got it out of the box. You can kind of tell if I do an unwrapping or an unpacking video, that's probably one that I'm going to use right away. I don't do many unpacking videos. I do some more walkthroughs, but unpacking videos are pretty rare for me. So if I do an unpacking video, you probably know that that's one that I'm using right away. Another was one I got a couple years ago now, the Muse Cat Tarot, box within a box. The Korean creator of this I follow on Instagram, and she's coming out with another version now, but she has changed some of the cards. For a while it was out of print very briefly, but then she came out with the next version. It has the most beautiful backs of any deck that I have. It's a standard Rider-Waite-Smith system, very clear, very easy to read as Rider-Waite-Smith, but just with these beautiful cats. And it has a black and gold card. Those I had to look up. I often will use them as yes and no, but that is not the intention of them. The guidebook is in Korean only, and so I've had to use a translation app on that. I just adore this deck. This is the Muse Cat Tarot. This is a South Korean artist, South Korean company. South Koreas are the ones that are our allies, our long-term allies. And finally, the third deck that I used as soon as I got it is a Minchiari deck, Francois de Pailly Tarot. It is an historic Minchiari deck with plain pips, but it has the ages of man, the senses. It also has the regular virtues, and then the kings are represented as different countries. Kings of the courts as 4 different countries, and it has the astrological signs. This predominant kind of gray, green, and red in the deck coloration, so that I consider this my official Christmas deck. But it's a deck that I just love. In spite of the fact that the cards are small, I think any of you who follow me know I'm not crazy about small cards. Just beautiful, beautiful, and unusual historic deck. So that was the 3 decks that I felt called to use as soon as I received them. Prompt number 2 is 3 decks in your collection that you have never felt called to use, and why? And here they are. The Spirit Keepers Tarot, the Alchemical Tarot, and I'll start with the Victorian Fairy Tarot. And it's no diss to this deck, because I do like this deck, and I actually was thinking I will probably work this in before the end of the year, because this is one of the few decks that I have that has a winter season, and it's, well, boy, it certainly is great for fall right now too. It's the 4 suits are seasons in this deck. I just haven't, I'm always a little cautious with fairy decks. I will say I only have 2 fairy decks, and the other one took me for a ride. And I still have them both. And so I just say it's more abundance of caution. And if you know the decks that I like, you can kind of look at these and tell they're a little busier than what I usually like in terms of visuals, and so that might be part of it too. But you know, it came with that marvelous whole collection: large deck, small deck, guidebook, notebook, a scarf. It was a great, a beautiful package, and I think there's still some available. Lovely cards and a lovely deck, and lunar moth on the back. And oh, is that an Irish harp? I hadn't even, how could I not have noticed that? Yeah, there's a little Celtic harp on the back there. So I definitely will be using that. I have mentioned before that my malaise with the Spirit Keeper Tarot, this is another one that it's just busy. It's visually busy for me with all of the things going on. Tammy Pie has had a wonderful, introspective, very personal deep dive with the deck, which I've been watching. You know, there are only so many hours in the day. I've watched a few of them, and I intend to watch the rest. This is a deck I want to like more. I so admire Benabel Wen. And then when I see individual cards come up, either on Instagram or on people's readings, I'm like, oh, I do really like that deck. But it just, as I said, it has never called to me. I have not plunked down the money to print out the book of maps and the other book, just because I don't want to spend that much more money on this if I'm truly not going to be called to work with this deck. I actively still consider rehoming this deck, especially as the prices on them go higher online. It starts to become less realistic for me to hold on to it just as something I might work with one day. But my jury is out on that, and until then, I pulled it out to use in a VR that used a lot of different decks recently, and I pull it out occasionally. Again, you know, some decks, you open them up and your heart swells and you feel this great love, and I don't for this. And so I'm working through that. And then finally, the Alchemical Tarot of Robert M. Place. Now, I love his art style. I will say that right away, and nudity alert, because there's always lots of nudity in his decks. I love his art style. I'm not so much into the alchemical stuff. If I have recommended a channel before, Esoterica, with this brilliant theological historian, he's a rabbi, and he works very closely with another channel called, I think it's Let's Talk Religion, I think is the name of that. And he has said very definitively through his historical perspective that alchemy was not intended to be a spiritual practice initially. It was a scientific practice of the actual trying to make gold. Since then, it has become an analogy for spiritual practice. Now, another reason that I have not, oh, there we go. Ooh. We got all the booty shots there. This is another reason I'm not crazy about this deck. This is the Seven of Pentacles. The 7, 8, and 9 of Pentacles, as you know, are my favorite cards. And to turn them into static towers, especially the 9 of Pentacles being turned into a static tower. No, there's the 9. Okay, so it's not completely static. It's a tree. I can get with that. I would have gotten with this imagery more for the 7. So I don't like the way in any of his decks that of the 2 decks that I have of his, I don't like the way he represents those. I don't like the way he represents the Pentacles in general. And since that's my favorite suit, it kind of puts me off. But even that's not... This is probably the reason I haven't gotten to this yet. This is how thick the deck is, and that's how thick the book is. That should tell you something. I do feel that to work with his decks, you need to be, like Benabel Wen, his decks are so dense that I would need to make it a study deck. And as I said, I'm just not called to work with this one. Now, I have his other one that I always forget the English name of it. I have the French version, Le Tarot de Sept Vertus. It has the virtues in it, and put the virtues in anything and I'm there, because that's aspirational to me. And so, and I got that deck second. This is a higher quality version than that one, but that one calls to me more because of the virtues, and it's still his gorgeous artwork. So I don't foresee, I foresee keeping this in the collection. And you'll see the next question is about deep study. This isn't on my deep study list yet, so, but I do definitely, just as one would in a library, I keep things for potential deep study that are not on my current list for deep study. So that was prompt 2, the decks in your collection that you've never felt called to use and why. This prompt, prompt 3, is 3 decks in your collection that you want to do a deep study with and why. So I'll start with the more obvious one. Still banded, still in order. The Hieronymus Bosch Tarot. Any of you who know about this deck know that it greatly changed. Now this has the sins instead of the virtues. This has the sins. 7 deadly sins. And it does have some of the usual suits, but not the usual number of them. It has Ace, King, Queen, Prince and Baron, and Knight, and Page. And that's all that it has for each suit. And then it has more suits. It has the suit of coins, the suit of books. So basically, it's more or less an all-court card. Vessels, a deck comprised of all court cards. Swords. So the traditional suits are here. Skates. Birds. Berries. I think the berries is the one that's closest to cups. And then it has the traditional majors. So having the sins and the majors and then different suits, it's almost a Tarocchini and almost a Minchiati. It's just somewhere. And then, of course, these are all renamed. Some of them recognizable, as in the Lovers, but instead of the Hierophant, the Surgeon. They are, as is Bosch's work, dark. And those of you who follow me know that I have decks that I collect simply because they are the work of great artists. I think there might be another Bosch deck out there. There's certainly, the Serpent and the Peacock certainly incorporates some of his artistic imagery in that deck, but this is exclusively devoted to his work, and it has a beautiful edging. I don't anticipate this being a problem for me to work with, but I will have to sit down and figure it out. Additional suits, I would just need to be sure I understand what the suits are supposed to represent. In some respects, because it is this different from normal, in some respects that would make it easier for me. This deck, because it has an obvious change, but yet a structural similarity, I think is going to be easier for me. So that's the number. There is no high or low, and these are just ones that I want to eventually do a deep dive with that are kind of on my list. The next was my dream deck. I always, at one point I said, I just wish somebody would do a Winnie the Pooh deck, and then very shortly after that they opened this up, and I absolutely adore this. This is the Wisdom of Pooh. Two different fools, and additional majors: precious friends, togetherness, bravery. It's easy to read with. I have read with this. I've definitely used this deck. You know, when I talked about decks that just give you a warm, fuzzy feeling. Well, of course, it's Winnie the Pooh. This was my dream deck, so this is one that I'm going to love. However, I do have, because they were having additional printing problems, I had not ordered the big book. But for those of us who ordered this and then they had the printing snafu, we were given a free copy of the PDF of the big book, which basically has an additional Winnie the Pooh story for every card. So, of course, that's something I want to dive into. And it would just give me even more to work with this deck, because I just adore it. And I was able to get the yellow edges. I considered very strongly getting a second copy. I didn't, I think mainly because I feel like I have what I want with this. That doesn't make any sense, I know. Don't ask me to start making sense. And finally, the Pensive Path Tarot, which is new to me and I have not worked with. I saw this on the Highly Sensitive Tarot's page, and as soon as I saw it, I knew this was a deck that I wanted to have. It's just beautiful. It's classic artwork, but not the same old ones that you usually see. Anything that has a musician in the Eight of Pentacles, you know, is going to be up my alley. The Nine of Pentacles with peacocks and grapes. The Seven of Pentacles, working in the field. I just, and it isn't that, this isn't going to be hard for me to grasp because it is very traditional Rider-Waite-Smith, but for me this is I would call this a deep study just because I would want to spend time with these images and really feel them deeply. Now, what I was saying before about that the Spirit Keeper's Tarot not only doesn't call to me, it just doesn't warm my heart. This one just makes my heart swell, and this is what brings me joy. And that, more than anything else, would be why I'm considering selling on the Spirit Keeper's Tarot, because I don't know that I need to keep any decks that I don't have that feeling for. And at this point, I have so many decks that I have that feeling for. I just don't know. I'm having talks with myself about whether I really do. I never had the intention to become a collector. I mean, some people, that's their, that is a reason in and of itself. It isn't for me. I want to have decks that I really work with and use, and so that's part of my consideration now. This is one that obviously I intend to use and to feel deeply. So those were the 3 decks in my collection that I plan to do a deep study with. And now the final prompt, 3 decks you want to use before the end of the year. I have told you before that I schedule my decks because both to add new things into the rotation, but also to keep fresh with the decks that I read with regularly, and I want to remain fresh on their cards and what they look like. So the easiest thing for me to do was to pick out 3 decks that I know are already scheduled for me, and I'll start with the Visconti Sforza. To me, the Visconti Sforza is just like is just basics of reading because of the history of the deck and the essential quality of it. It's something that's always going to remain near the top of my reading pile. I don't want to go more than a month or 2 without working it back into my rotation because to me it's seminal. To me it is as important as Rider-Waite-Smith or Tarot de Marseille. It's right up there in being a basic and something that I want to be a basic for me. I want to remain really fluid with it. So this is the Pierpont Morgan Visconti Sforza. As I'm sure you're aware, there are many different versions of this, and I actually got this at a good deal with a beautiful wooden box. I got it on eBay, beautiful wooden box, and the cards for the same amount that I would pay for a typical mass market deck. So what's not to love? The Boadicea's Tarot of Earthly Delights. I've talked about this many times before. I have worked with this some. I play with this a good deal because I'd say there are only a handful of decks that I would describe as being me in a deck, and this is one of them. The fact that this was mass market and inexpensive, and inexpensive, and that it is so fanciful and vivid. That's a great word for this deck, just vivid. It's a basic for me. So this is in my schedule before the end of the year. I think this is in my October leading up to Halloween rotation. And again, this is one of the decks that lives right next to my reading space. I don't have many decks that live there. Sometimes I'll have new decks that I haven't worked with yet there, but then I have my hardworking decks are there, and this is one of them. And then finally, you will, I think, see a similarity in tone with the Folkloric Forest and the Pensive Path. I got this one first. I so love the peculiar pathways of Lennox Rees. Sorry, I just blank on names. That I saw this and I wanted to get this because I know she's doing like forest and beach, and I won't be getting the other ones. I have said before, I believe I am a forest creature. If I had to choose, forest would be it for me. Although, I mean, it would be lovely to have a mix of, forest, but I mean, this is why the forest speaks to me, the streams and the forest, and this is on my list to use, I think, for early October. It's either October or November, because there's an overall autumn feel about this deck to me. But again, it's gorgeous classical artwork, and it just speaks to me on a very deep level. And for all of the things that I said about the Pensive Path, I would probably even think about pairing them. I think they provide similar and yet different things within the same kind of concept or framework. So the Folkloric Forest Tarot is the third of my decks that I plan to use before the end of the year. As I said, it's already on my schedule, so barring anything major catastrophe, I will be working with it. So that is hashtag the 12 deck tag. I had trouble sticking to 12, but I started to put 4 in each category, and then I said, no, I really want to stick to the goal of it. So that's fun. Angel at Feeding My Soul 1212. I hope you've enjoyed this little perspective on what I work with, what I don't work with, and why, and how that's going. And of course, this is just a snapshot in time. If I did this same thing 6 months from now, it would undoubtedly be different. I hope you have a lovely day and enjoy the decks that you're working with. Thank you.